The wind howled across the barren plains, dragging a ribbon of white dust that stung the eyes and bit through the coats of even the toughest cowhands. Dusk had already sunk into the jagged horizon, painting the sky with bruised colors of lavender and dying gold. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a wolf cried, a hollow, lonely sound that carried the cold weight of winter. Jed Carver pulled his hat lower, his gloved hands gripping the reins of his horse, buckshot as the snow began to fall in lazy spirals. "Ain't no soul dumb enough to be out here this time of night," he muttered to himself, his voice muffled under the scarf that covered his mouth. He'd spent all day checking the fence line of the Carson ranch, making sure the storm hadn't torn down any posts. The last thing he expected was company. Yet as he turned the bend near the old creek bed, he saw it, a dark figure huddled beside a boulder, barely moving. The horse snorted, uneasy. Jed narrowed his eyes, leaning forward in the saddle. "What in the hell?" he whispered. The figure was wrapped in some kind of tattered cloth, half buried under the snow. For a moment he thought it might be a trick of the light, but then he saw a hand twitch, a pale, trembling hand reaching out weakly. Instinct overrode caution. He dismounted, his boots crunching in the snow. "Hey, you'll freeze out here," he shouted, his breath forming clouds in the bitter air. No response, only the ragged whisper of the wind. He crouched down, brushing the snow off the figure's shoulder, and felt a shiver crawl up his spine when he realized it wasn't a drifter's coat. It was a thin piece of linen, soaked through and clinging to skin. He pulled back the edge of the cloth, expecting to see a weathered face, maybe an outlaw, maybe a beggar. But when the cloth fell away, the breath froze in his chest. She was young, too young to be out here alone. Her face was delicate but pale as moonlight, lips blue, lashes frozen with tiny white crystals. Her hair spilled out in waves of dark mahogany, tangled with snowflakes, and for a moment Jed just stared, unable to believe she was real. "Good God," he muttered. "What's a girl like you doing out here?" He slid his arms under her, surprised by how light she was. She stirred, just barely, whispering something he couldn't catch. He carried her back to buckshot, lifting her onto the saddle before climbing up behind her, wrapping his coat around them both. The nearest shelter was the line cabin about 2 miles east. If he hurried, maybe she'd live long enough to tell her story. The ride was rough, the snow thickened, turning the world into a swirling storm of white. His horse stumbled once or twice, but Jed pushed on, muttering prayers between his teeth. By the time they reached the cabin, the storm was in full rage. He kicked open the door, half frozen himself, and laid her on the bunk near the fire pit. The cabin was small, one room, a cot, a table, a wood stove, and a shelf lined with jars of beans and coffee. He tore off his gloves and struck a match, lighting the lanterns before working on the fire. Soon the room flickered to life, orange glow chasing away the dark. He turned back to her. She hadn't moved. Carefully he peeled away the soaked fabric that clung to her and found a deep bruise along her shoulder, another across her ribs. Someone had hurt her, badly. He swallowed hard, fetching his canteen and damp cloth to clean her up. "Who did this to you, miss?" he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. She murmured again, just one word this time, a name or maybe a plea. "Eli." Jed frowned. "Eli? That your kin?" She didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered open for just a second, and when they met his, something electric passed between them, fear, desperation, and something else. Something hauntingly familiar. "You saved me," she breathed, her voice like the crack of dry leaves. "Don't try talking. You're safe now," he said softly, draping his blanket over her. She drifted off again, and Jed sat back, his heart hammering. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd seen her before. Not here, not in this life maybe, but somewhere deep in the corners of memory. He poured himself a bit of whiskey, staring into the fire. Snow battered the window like a ghost trying to get in. He thought of the name she'd said, Eli. Could be her husband, brother, or someone who left her for dead. Either way, it didn't sit right. In this country, you didn't leave anyone behind, not even your worst enemy. When morning came, the storm had quieted, leaving the world still and white. Jed checked on her. She was breathing easier, color creeping back into her cheeks. When she opened her eyes again, they were green, sharp, well, green like the pines after rain. "Where am I?" she asked. "My line cabin," he said. "You were half dead when I found you. Name's Jed Carver." She blinked slowly, confusion flickering across her face. I didn't mean to be here. I was trying to get away." "From who?" Her lips parted, but then she froze, staring at the scar on his hand, a long, jagged mark from an old knife fight years back. "You," she whispered, her eyes widening. "You don't remember me, do you?" Jed frowned. "Can't say I do, ma'am." "Should I?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "You should have," she said softly. "You promised you'd come back for me." He stood there, thunderstruck, the room spinning for a heartbeat. "Well, what are you talking about?" But she was already crying, silent tears cutting through the dirt on her face. "It's been years," she said. "They told me you died in the fire." Jed's pulse roared in his ears. "Fire?" Then it hit him like a rifle shot. The old Hartley Ranch fire 5 years ago. He'd ridden with the search party. A woman had gone missing that night. The rancher's daughter, Evelyn Hartley. They never found her body. "Evelyn," he whispered, his throat tightening. "That's you, ain't it?" She nodded weakly. "You saved me once before, and you didn't even know it." The memory came flooding back. He'd pulled a little girl from that burning barn when he was younger, before the war. Never knew what became of her. But now she was here, grown, broken, running from something dark. "Who hurt you, Evelyn?" he asked. Her voice trembled. "He's coming." "He knows I escaped. You shouldn't have found me." "Who?" he demanded. She looked toward the window as a gust of wind rattled the glass. "Eli," she whispered again. "He's not my kin, Jed. He's my husband." The words hit like a hammer. Jed's gut clenched, eyes flicking to the door, as if expecting the devil himself to kick it open. Evelyn's husband was out there, maybe hunting her, maybe already tracking his way through the snow. Jed pulled his revolver from his belt, checked the chamber, and set it on the table beside him. "He'll have to go through me first," he said quietly. Evelyn looked at him then, a strange light in her eyes, part fear, part hope, part memory of the man she thought she'd lost long ago. The fire crackled between them, casting their shadows against the wall like two ghosts bound by fate. Outside, the storm began to ease, but the danger was only beginning. Somewhere out there, Eli was coming, and the night was far from over. The fire had burned low by the time dawn's grey light slipped through the frost-covered window. Jed Carver sat in the creaking chair beside the cot, his revolver resting on his thigh, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and unease. Evelyn slept fitfully, twisting under the blanket, murmuring words he couldn't make out. He hadn't slept a wink. Every sound outside made his hand twitch toward the gun. The storm had calmed, but silence in the wilderness could be more dangerous than thunder. Silence meant something was listening, watching. Jed's instincts were honed by years of ranch work and rough living. He could feel trouble long before it arrived. And trouble, he knew, was already riding through that snow. He stood, poured himself a tin of coffee, and stared out the window. The white landscape stretched endless and cold, except for a single trail of broken snow leading from the west. He cursed under his breath. Tracks, horse tracks. Someone had followed his trail through the storm. He turned back toward Evelyn, who was now awake, staring at him with fear so real it made his stomach twist. "He's here, isn't he?" she whispered. Jed nodded grimly. "Looks that way. You can't face him. Jed, you don't know what he's capable of." "Lady, I've faced rattlers, bandits, and worse. Ain't a man alive I can't handle." "You don't understand," she said, sitting up despite her trembling limbs. "Eli isn't a man anymore. Not after what he's done." Jed frowned, slipping on his coat and checking his rifle. "Then maybe it's time." Somebody reminded him he still bleeds. He opened the door and stepped into the biting cold. The wind had died, and the only sound was the faint crunch of hooves somewhere beyond the ridge. He took position behind the cabin wall, heart steady, breath controlled. Minutes dragged like hours. Then came the echo of a horse's snort, a man's voice muttering low. Jed peeked around the corner. A rider approached, tall, cloaked in black, his horse steaming with frost. The man dismounted slowly, his boots sinking deep into the snow. Even from a distance, Jed could see the glint of metal at his belt, 2 revolvers, worn and well used. The stranger looked up at the cabin and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Morning," the man called, his voice deep and smooth as oil. "Fine day for a reunion, ain't it?" Jed's grip tightened. "You Eli?" "That's right. And I reckon you've got something that belongs to me." His tone was casual, but the threat beneath it was sharp enough to cut glass. Jed stepped out, rifle at his shoulder. "If you mean the lady, she ain't yours no more," Eli chuckled, brushing snow from his hat. "You don't get it, friend. She's mine by law, by vow, by everything that binds a man and woman. You hand her over, and I'll let you live." Jed didn't lower his gun. "Not a chance." Eli's eyes darkened. "You really think she wants to stay with you? You don't know her like I do. She's a liar, a manipulator. You think she's some innocent angel that wandered off in the snow? She killed a man." The words hit hard. Jed blinked. "You're lying." "Am I?" Eli smirked. "Ask her. Ask her what happened to her father." Jed's pulse quickened. He remembered the Hartley Ranch fire, the tragedy that started it all. "You're saying she—" "Started it," Eli finished, eyes glinting with cruel delight. "That night she burned down her own daddy's barn. You think she's some damsel? She's the devil in silk." Jed shook his head, refusing to believe it. But before he could speak, the cabin door opened behind him. Evelyn stood in the doorway, pale as snow but steady, her hair loose around her shoulders. "That's not true," she said, her voice low but firm. "Don't listen to him, Jed." Eli grinned wider. "Oh, it's true, sweetheart. I was there. I saw the flames. I saw you run, saw your daddy fall trying to save you." Evelyn's breath hitched, and tears sprang to her eyes. "You're twisting it," she said.
"He hit me."
"He hit Mama. I was trying to stop him, not kill him. The lamp fell, and the fire took everything," Eli finished, stepping closer. "And I was the one who found you, remember? Took you in, saved you. You owe me." Evelyn's face hardened. "You didn't save me, Eli, you owned me." For a heartbeat the world stood still. Then Eli drew first, fast as lightning. But Jed was faster. His rifle cracked, the bullet tearing through Eli's shoulder. The outlaw staggered but didn't fall. He fired back, the shot grazing Jed's arm and sending him stumbling behind the woodpile. Evelyn screamed, diving for cover as bullets splintered the cabin walls. The echo rolled across the empty valley like thunder. Eli laughed between shots, blood staining his coat. "You think you can take me, cowboy? You don't even know who she really is." Jed gritted his teeth, checking his chamber. 2 bullets left. "Don't need to know who she was," he muttered. "Only who she is now." He broke cover, firing once, twice. The first missed. The second hit Eli square in the chest. The outlaw staggered backward, the snow blooming red beneath him. For a long moment he just stared at Jed, a strange sadness flickering behind the rage. "You'll regret this," Eli rasped. "You'll see what she's done." Then he collapsed into the snow, motionless. Jed lowered his rifle, breathing hard, the silence deafening after the storm of gunfire. Evelyn rushed out, kneeling beside Eli's body. For a second, Jed thought she might weep, but instead she reached into Eli's coat and pulled out a bundle of papers bound by twine. "What's that?" Jed asked. She opened it with shaking hands. "Proof," she said softly. He made me sign everything over to him. The ranch, the land, he was planning to sell it all. My father's legacy." Her tears fell onto the pages. "He killed my father, Jed. He just made me believe I did." Jed stared at her, realization dawning. Eli hadn't just been cruel, he'd been clever, manipulating her guilt, using it to control her. "It's over now," he said quietly. "You're free." Evelyn shook her head. "No one's ever really free out here." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "But maybe we can start again." They buried Eli before sundown, under the old pine near the frozen creek. The wind sang through the branches, soft and mournful. Jed said nothing. He just stood with his hat in his hands, watching the snow cover the man who'd brought so much pain. When it was done, they rode back to the cabin. The firelight warmed the walls, and for the first time in years, Evelyn smiled, not out of joy but relief. "I used to dream of this place," she said quietly. "Not this cabin, but peace, just peace. Jed poured her a cup of coffee, his arm bandaged.
You got it now.
Storm's over. She looked at him, the firelight catching in her eyes. You never came back for me? Jed, all those years ago. Didn't know you were still waiting, he said, his voice rough. But I'm here now. Outside, night fell over the plains. The stars came out, bright and cold. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Inside, two lost souls found warmth in the silence. Jed leaned against the doorframe, watching her as she drifted to sleep by the fire, her face peaceful for the first time since he'd found her. He knew the world wouldn't stop throwing storms their way, but maybe, just maybe, they could face them together. Weeks passed. Snow melted into spring. Word spread of a gunfight in the hills, of a stranger who'd taken down the outlaw Eli Kane. Folks came asking questions, but Jed didn't give them much. Just did what was right, he'd say. Evelyn began rebuilding what was left of her family's land, turning the ashes of her past into something new. Jed stayed on to help, mending fences, breaking horses, learning how to live, instead of just survive. And though neither said it aloud, something unspoken grew between them, a quiet, steady thing that no fire could burn away. One evening, months later, they stood together watching the sunset bleed across the fields. You ever think about leaving this place? She asked. Jed smiled faintly. Thought about it once. But I reckon I've found what I was looking for. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw not just the man who'd saved her, but the man who'd chosen to stay. You'll freeze out here? He said softly, echoing the words from that first night. She smiled. Not anymore. The wind swept across the land, carrying away the ghosts of the past. In that moment, under the dying light of the west, two hearts finally thawed.